Welcome to Successful Philanthropy. I'm your host, Jean Shafiroff. This show is designed to highlight the work of philanthropic leaders here in the United States and then beyond. Today with us, a very special woman. Her name, Brenda Simmons. She's the co-founder and the executive director of the soon-to-open Southampton African American Museum. Let's all welcome Brenda Simmons. Hi, Brenda.
Hi, thank you, Jean. It's good to be back again.
And great to have you back on Successful Philanthropy. And
Thank you.
Brenda, the last time you were on this show, back in the fall of 2020, you were telling us that you were ready to open the museum in November of 2020. What happened, and when is it going to open now?
Well, do you have 10 years? No, what had happened was we had a contractor who unfortunately wasn't the best contractor we could have, and I'll say it as nice as I can say it. And so with that, they had to take him off the project. And when they took him off the project, of course, they had to now rebid. And so that delayed the whole project. And then COVID hit. And after COVID hit, all the construction was delayed, of course, if you're everyone remembers that. And then sooner or later, they decided to continue to let the contractors start again. And the contractor was diagnosed with COVID.
So he had to stop.
So he had to stop. So again, it was another delay. But fast forward, I'm excited to announce that on June 19th, we will be having our grand opening.
Oh,
and that's located at 245 North Sea Road, Southampton.
And this is so exciting. I know that I'm going to be there. And I think you're having a preview party, correct?
Yes, we are having a VIP reception on Friday night, June 18th. And it's going to be really, really exciting. We're going to actually have the ribbon cutting. So all the officials are going to be there, and special guests like Jean are going to be there. And we're going to have the first initial walkthrough of the museum. We're going to have an upper level exhibition and a lower level exhibition. And also, we're going to have an unveiling of a beautiful, beautiful mural that David Martin from the reservation made. It's just absolutely fabulous.
Brenda, now, this museum has been in the making for about 16 years, correct?
Yeah.
How did it begin? And then you mentioned delays, but 16 years, this is not a normal delay in a construction project. What really happened?
You know, how do I say this? I will say it this way. I learned so much during this whole process. You have to go to Suffolk County Health Department process. That alone took 6 months. And when they had to find where the cesspools were. And they have to do this whole, for health reasons. And they didn't know where the cesspool was. I mean, this building was built in 1940 by Mr. Emanuel Seymour, who was part of the Great Migration. And the thing that I really want to emphasize to everyone who's listening, that alone is something that we really should think about. Here is a gentleman coming from south to north with the Great Migration in the 1940s. He came with a plan and a goal, and his plan and goal was to purchase property, to build a building. He was a barber. So with all of that, it's just such amazing just to think about that alone. That alone is history right there, that he came here and did that. And so moving forward, getting through all that health process, they had to find the cesspool. Then when they found the cesspool, Randy Conquest was the last owner. After they found the cesspool, he said to me, Brenda, there was another new one that they put in. So then they had to go back to the health department. And then it didn't take the 6 months, but it took another process. But that was an intense process, really. But then it had to go out to bid. When it first went out to bid, no one took the bid.
And why was that?
That's a good question, Jean. I really don't know the answer to that. I could make up an answer, or I can assume an answer. But I won't give an answer right now. But I will say.
And you don't want to go there.
I don't want to go there.
I understand.
I don't want to go there because, I don't want to go there right now. So the bottom line was I met with Fred Thiel. Assemblyman Fred Thiel has been so supportive, because just to give a little background, the building was purchased with community preservation funds, and is on village property. So there's an IMN, intermunicipality agreement between the town and the village, and the Southampton African American Museum has a license agreement to run it. So Fred Thiel is the one who really, really stood by me. So it is purchased by the town community preservation funds. And at that point, we had to find other funding to support, because community preservation can only cover so much of the construction.
Right, and how has that gone? Have you found the acquisition of funds easy or difficult?
It was challenging. It was very challenging. I will say this. We have to be mindful that we are in the Hamptons.
There's a lot of money in the Hamptons.
There's a lot of money in the Hamptons, but I will say this. I've traveled a lot, and when I tell people that I'm from Southampton, I get a look like, you're from Southampton? Really? And I proudly say, yes, born and raised.
And let's talk a little bit about what it was like for you, Brenda Simmons, growing up in Southampton.
It was overall, it was very well. It was very good. But you know, I grew up in the 50s, the mid to late 50s.
And were people respectful?
Basically, people were respectful, but we did have noticeable changes, a noticeable racism in Southampton. I'll say it that way.
And was there segregation?
Of course there was segregation. Where I lived, we called the Hill, which is off of North Sea Road. It consists of Hillcrest Avenue, Miller Road, and Wynwood Way. And that was all basically African-American community. And I did my research, and there actually used to be a whole farmland, potato field. And then it was changed up for where all the help was moved to. So that's the history of where I live, and the history of the area, actually where the museum is.
And what about growing up as a young girl and then a teenage girl? If you wanted to go into Southampton, to go to Main Street or Job's Lane, to go shopping or just to walk around, was that something you did? Or, because I think you told us once before that there was a problem with that.
You know, the interesting thing that, you know, when I look back, as I'm more mature now and looking back, my mom and dad was from the South, and they were also part of the Great Migration. So I think that fear and that experience they had in South, they brought it to the North. And I guess you would think that it wouldn't be ineffective in the North, but my parents always made sure, they kept telling us not to go down, we couldn't go down Job's Lane. And I couldn't understand why we couldn't go down Job's Lane. So I was in high school, and a group of us was doing what high school kids do, and we had a little something to drink and then hanging out. And we decided we were going to drive down Job's Lane to find out what the heck it is that we can't go down Job's Lane. So we go down Windmill Lane, we turn left to go down Job's Lane, and we're seeing these beautiful mannequins dressing these wonderful clothes, and I'm like, well, what's the big deal? We get to the end of the road to turn left to go down Main Street, and a gentleman was walking down, and he said to us, what are you ends doing here?
And that's not a good thing. That's a terrible thing. And how did you react? What did you say to that man?
I can't tell the whole story, but some of the young gentlemen that was out, they decided to let him know that it wasn't a nice thing to say to us. And that's all I can say at this point. We didn't destroy him. We didn't do anything horrible to him. But I'll be honest with you, they let him know that it was nice to say to us. But
and they were right.
And they were right. And Jean, I tell you that at that moment, I understood my parents was protecting me. They were protecting us because they didn't want. And I had no idea, because I grew up. I went to school at Southampton High School. And I graduated in '73, and now everybody's gonna know my age. And so I have to say this though. We did want to have a Black Studies class and a Black Studies teacher, and we didn't have one. So we did a sit-out. I came from that civil rights area. I had the whole big Angela Davis afro and everything. So we did a sit-out. We did a sit-out, but I have to always remember there were other white kids that in my classmates that sat out with us. And I tease them to this day because I'm still very, very close with the majority of them.
And was it effective?
It was absolutely effective. We got the teacher and we got the class. But what I want to say, Jean, I recall that it was also, we were supported by other classmates as well, our white classmates. And I tease them to this day. I said, you guys just want to skip class. But they were very supportive. But it was effective.
Which is a good thing to hear, especially back then in the 60s, to hear that Southampton, the high school was supportive.
Yes, it was 70s.
70s.
Yes.
Okay, I don't want to make you older
Not even
than
make
you
me real
are.
old.
No. But that's a good thing to hear, because we worry about that. And now with everything that's happened in 2020, with the killing of George Floyd and the big racial justice movement, where do you stand with all of this? And how are you positioning yourself for the future?
To be honest with you, it saddens me. It really, really, really saddens me. I feel like we've gone back, like I don't know how many steps. And as you know, that I spend my winters in St. Martin. So all this happening with the trial, I stayed glued to the TV though, you know, and I have to say, when the verdict came down, it was like we could breathe again, you know, but it's not over, because you still, right after that or during this trial, they had how many killings, you know, how many shootings again with, you know, with cops and black men. So, you know, all I can say is I personally feel like for me, just like I'm sitting with you, I have white friends, I have all kinds of friends. I intend to continue to show love, because I'm love. And so I think one by one, little by little, we have to continue to do that. And I try to stay away from all the negativity, to be very honest with you.
And I like that, and that's what I do, because my friends are from everywhere and from every background, and I think that's so incredibly, it's life. It's the way it should be. It's what I want in my life. Now, do you have a wish list for the Southampton African American Museum? If you could have anything for that museum right now, we have an audience here, and you never know who's watching. What would that be?
To be honest with you, as an executive director and the co-founder, my most important concern is sustainability of the museum. So right now, you know, we've had a pretty well appeals letter that went out. It was okay, but I'm looking for someone to be a constant, a yearly donor, donors to the museum to help the sustainability of the museum.
And what about an annual membership? Are you offering that to people so that if people want to be members this year, then next year, something that renews every year? Is that something that?
Yes, we're going to definitely have that in place. We just had our whole beautiful website redone. It is absolutely fabulous.
I saw it. It's beautiful.
And so I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's not my that's not my thing, but I do believe they're going to, you know, put that inside where you can become a member, a long-time member, a yearly member, etc.
I think that's
very important.
Very important, because you could start at a level, say, of 10,000, then 5,000, 1,500, even 250. And for our audience, we are with Brenda Simmons. She is the co-founder and the executive director of the soon-to-open Southampton African American Museum, and she's giving us a little background on the museum. And Brenda, if our audience wants to donate and get involved, what is the website?
The website is www.saamuseum.org. And I want to say we do have, outside of the museum, it's called a Founders Campaign. And the goal is $150,000. So we're at around 50 at this point. So if anybody wants to give the extra 100, we'll take it. We'll take it.
Well, you might just get that.
We'll take it.
You might get much more. And I think, what will it cost you annually to run the museum?
About $85,000.
$85,000. And are you getting government funding, local funding, or state funding, or national funding?
Well, at this point, every year for the last 11 or 12 years where we've had events, we get a general grant from the county. And so that's how we've done our events. But we really weren't open. We were a virtual museum at the time, so we did a lot of collaboration with the variety of different museums around us. So now that we're in our building now, we're going to definitely have to have more funding to continue our events.
And so what percentage of the $85,000 are you getting from government moving forward?
$11,000.
So you still have a lot of fundraising to do.
Of course.
And So I think you'll be successful. Something
Oh,
tells
oh,
me.
I do believe that.
I
You
think
know,
there's a lot of support, and I think the community is happy that this is finally opening. It was a long time in the works. 16 years is a long time for. It's a small structure too,
yes, yes.
and so it's a long time.
It's a labor
And
of
I'm
love.
very, very happy for you. Now, I want to talk a little bit about some of the programming that you're going to have there. Will you be doing virtual programming and teaching and educating high school students?
Yes.
Tell us, I'm curious.
Yes, I'm excited to share this. We have been collaborating with the local public school for probably 11 years, and we will continue that. Matter of fact, I've been on 2 or 3 Zoom meetings in the last 2 weeks. We're going to continue collaboration with the school. But the thing that I will say that we could use funding for is we have a 3-theme programming, and it's going to be about the Great Migration. It's going to be about the history of the black barbershops and beauticians, and also Pierce Concert, a former slave that was born and raised in Southampton. So with that, we have a proposal, and the proposal consists of the virtual reality, hands-on things, like say for instance, you can get on the whaling ship with Pierce Concert and go through his whole journey that when he went to Japan and discovered all those things. You can be sitting in a barber chair and feel what it was like to cut your hair, and you can actually go through the Great Migration, start from South and actually journey. And this is all virtual reality that students can do. So we have a programming, for a proposal for that. We were able to get the wiring part of it done before the walls got in, but we have a little bit more wiring to do, but more than also, we need to have the actual programming to be done as well.
And about the Great Migration, you mentioned your parents were involved in the Great Migration, and what was that like for them? Did they speak about it?
You know, this is the thing that has been unfortunate, Jean, about, because I do a lot of interviews. I've done a lot of interviews trying. As a matter of fact, we do have a few interviews that we did that's going to be displayed and be able to be seen at the museum. But you know, I began to understand so many people went through so much hell that they don't want to talk about it. Because even a few interviews I did, it's almost like I had to pull it out of people, you know, to talk about how it was and what they went through, you know. So unfortunately, I know this one woman talked about how when she was traveling, how she couldn't stay in the hotels and how they used to pack so much food. They would pack loads and loads of food because they couldn't even stop at restaurants because they were white onlys. So those are things that I did hear some people say when I interviewed them. But you know, the thing was they were coming to North for a better life, and they did have a better life, but at the same time, there was still racism here that they experienced.
Well, we, as a community and as a world, we can never forget these moments because in different parts of the world, this continues, and we have to always remember. So I'm assuming that history will be in the museum.
Absolutely. That's why I was saying the theme is going to be the Great Migration.
Well, you mentioned that, but I didn't know how
Oh, yes,
deep
it's going to go deep.
into.
It's going to go very, very deep. You know, because I think more than anything, like I said, we're collaborating with the public schools, and I think to me that is so important because the kids do not learn this in school. They don't have this in the curriculum.
Well, and the next generation, we must teach the next generation.
So they can teach the next generation.
Yes, and you never want history to repeat itself, the bad history.
Absolutely not.
So, and now another thing, you mentioned the barber and this shop. Was it only for people of color or did everybody come in?
You know what's really awesome? I actually did an interview with a gentleman here, John McGann. And he said he used to go into the barbershop. He's a white gentleman. He was really from, I think, East Hampton or Sag Harbor. But
Jonathan McCann?
I think that's his name. And
I know him.
It was just so awesome to hear that. And I was excited. And I really wanted people to know that. It wasn't just, you know, but it was definitely a gathering place for the blacks during that time, you know, because they didn't feel comfortable. They came there to let their hair down. There was a juke joint there. There was a restaurant. So they came in to let their hair down. And if you know the history of barbershops, which is going to be talked about on Friday night, because the keynote speaker is Quincy Mills. He's a professor, and he wrote a book about the history of black barbershops. And so he's going to be the keynote speaker for Friday night. And he explains, and he will explain that night, and I read half the book. I hope you don't see this. I didn't read the whole book yet, Quincy. But it talks about how so much important, even Randy Conquest, the last barber, talks about how important in the conversations that went on in the barbershops. They talked about the importance of voting, the importance of education, and he himself trained 4 or 5 young black men to be barbers, and they are still barbers as of today. So, you know, that's the importance that I want to share also. It wasn't just coming and getting your hair cut. It was also a really, really, we call it the gathering place.
And now education. So a museum is for educating people, young, middle-aged, and then older. And as you look at the community of Southampton, do you think that, and the world, is there enough education available to people of color?
You know, there is not. And I think that is one of the main reasons why I hung in there for 16 years to leave this, not only to leave the legacy, but to share so much important, exciting information that we have contributed, the blacks have contributed to this community and to this world itself, you know.
For sure.
And it's not even being talked about. It's not really being revealed. You know, I remember when I first did my first exhibition in the town hall, 2005, I believe it was. It was about, it was all about, you know, black people who were inventors, black inventors, you know. So it was just, information is going to come out, information. But I want to say too, I want to just say before we finish, on Saturday, on Juneteenth on Saturday, we're having an awesome all-black female barbershop quartet group from DC perform on Saturday, and they are so good.
And what time is that going to be?
Well, everything starts at 11 o'clock for the first walk-in, and you have to go online to register because of COVID. Everybody can go online and register for a slot to go in because of the capacity. And then you come out, and then the program will start around 1 or 2 o'clock. And then Halo would perform. We have certain moves that's going to be formed, a jazz band. We're going to have a slight panel discussion and also a barbecue.
Well, it's going to be a very exciting weekend for the museum and I think for the community. And
absolutely.
I'm looking forward to it. And now, Brenda, what a lot of people don't know about you is that you actually worked for the government. I think you worked for Mayor Mark Epley, and you worked for him for many, many years as his right-hand man, or right-hand woman, 11, I should say.
11 years.
Amazing.
11 years. I watched his kids go to high school, to college, get married, and have children. So I'm like part of the family. Yeah.
And now, as we look forward, and as you remember that background, has that experience working in government been helpful in preparing the museum?
Absolutely, absolutely. You
Wonderful.
know, because I've treated people, I always say I treat people the way I want to be treated. And with that, I have to say very humbly, I'm highly respected in the village of Southampton.
I know that, yes. You're a wonderful woman, and I love what you're doing for the community and for people around the globe, really, because we get visitors from all over, and this will be a place that people will come to learn more about the African American community in the Hamptons and the history of the community and then how we can all come together, which I think is so important. And I think it's been a tough year with COVID, with of the racial situation, the killing of George Floyd and other deaths, and we need to come together as we move forward. We always need to move forward and be united, and I think what you're doing is going to be very helpful, and I have to applaud you for all you're doing.
Thank
and
you.
For our audience, we have been sharing this half an hour with Brenda Simmons. She is the Executive Director and founder of the Southampton African American Museum, which is soon to open on June 19th in Southampton. And she's given us a lot of history of the museum. And for all of you watching, we are a show about philanthropy. And to be a philanthropist, you give your time, you give your knowledge, and you give your available resources. And some of you watching might say, well, I don't have any money to give, but you still can become a philanthropist. And how do you do that? you give your time and you give your knowledge. You can volunteer and never say, well, I have nothing to offer, because all of you do. And now, Brenda, what advice do you give to our audience, to young people, and to people of all ages that want to get involved in the philanthropic process?
Something I want to say, we are better together.
No
we are
question.
better together.
No question.
And when we're better together, then we respect each other, we help each other, we feel each other's pain, we feel each other's sorrows and emotions and celebrations.
Yes.
And so we're better together.
Well, that's a wonderful thing to say. And do you have volunteer opportunities for those watching this show and for everyone who may read about or learn about your museum?
Yes, you can go to the website, www.samuseum.org, or you can call. We have our phone now. It's 631-353-3299. That's 631-353-3299. And we welcome everyone.
Now, as executive director, will you be there every day, or will you be also working from home a little bit because of the pandemic? But are you accessible if someone wants to reach out to you and maybe offer something special?
Well, the great thing about it, I am literally walking distance from the museum. I live in the community. That's where I live. So you can call me, and generally I'm there. I've been there just about every day since I've been back. So I'm going to be there every day. And we're going to probably have the museum open every day throughout the summer. And then, of course, during the fall, it's probably going to close up. And then moving forward, depending on the staffing, we probably will have appointment by appointment only. But at the beginning, when it's so exciting, everybody's going to be. We're going to try to have the museum open as much as we can.
Very exciting, and this is history in the making for our community and for our country and our world. And I'm so thrilled to have you with us. And for our audience, our guest today was Brenda Simmons, the Executive Director and founder of the Southampton African American Museum. I'm your host, Jean Shafiroff. Thank you for joining us, and I'll see you next week.